huge tower looming above it that it would be near impossible not to see it from almost anywhere this side of the forest. I stared forward in the dark, squinting as Daniel moved his light back to get a view of the station. I kept my own flashlight turned off in order to save its battery in case his ran out. But I had to admit, his constant tomfoolery with that damn flashlight was going to get on my nerves if he kept it out. Would you stop that? What? Dicking around with the flashlight. What about the flashlight? I raised my voice for him, remembering the cotton in his ears. You're dicking around with it! Before I could finish that sentence, a sound erupted from in front of us, even loud enough for Daniel to hear through his bandages. It was the groan of an animal, either aggressive or in defense of itself. Dan whipped back around, his flashlight pointing straight towards the source of the sound while I stopped in my tracks and stood perfectly still. It was an elk. Enormous in size, with eyes glowing white at us in the darkness. There was no way it could have gone unheard, leading me to believe that it had been standing there perfectly still all this time. Its antlers clacked against the surrounding trees as it shook its head, stomping its front hooves into the dirt and stone. Dan and I both backed up several feet, but the elk didn't charge at us. Rather, once it was finished making noise and stomping about, it turned and stared at us for the longest moment. Its eyes were reflective orbs, but I watched it blink. Its eyelids were to the right and left, meeting vertically like that of a reptile. Then, with a heavy grunt, it bounded heavily away further into the woods. I noticed between instances of wondering how close I had been to shitting my pants just now, that it ran with a really odd gallop. It had 3 back legs, one on one side and 2 on the other. It was a seriously fucked up elk. Is there anything out here that doesn't look like an absolute abomination? Daniel asked in a hoarse whisper, his flashlight slowly scanning in a search for anything else that might be hiding in trees and overgrown brush. There was nothing, not even a sound. After a few hesitant moments, we were on the move again, though I decided shouting probably wasn't the best decision to make. I was looking down at my phone, watching the bars in the left corner. I wouldn't have expected to have any signal out here, but strangely, a single bar kept flashing and then disappearing, as if it wanted to find a connection. I had no explanation for it, but I didn't think on it too much. Of all the weird crap I've seen out here, a cell phone signal in the woods was the least of my curiosities. But if I could get just one more bar, maybe I could try making a call. How do you know her? Daniel broke the silence after we were sure no more giant mutated elks were stomping around. This missing girl, you seemed dead set on finding her. She was my best friend in college. We had a dorm together, we graduated together, we lived together for a bit. She was generous when I needed a place to stay. And now you live in a radio station. I turned my eyes back to my phone, shrugging my shoulders. I acted nonchalant, like I didn't give 2 shits. I actually gave quite a considerable amount of shits. She didn't want me there anymore, okay? She just didn't want me there anymore. I could feel the question in the air. I didn't have to look at Daniel to know what he was thinking. How badly he wanted to ask why a generous best friend would kick someone out of their house. Luckily, before he had a chance to speak, and before I needed to think of a new conversation, I saw it. 2 bars on my phone, springing to life and defying all odds against this wild, uninhabitable mountain. I raised my phone up in victory, stopping exactly where I stood for fear of losing the signal. Yes, we have it! We have a signal! Daniel gave me a confused stare before I had a chance to explain. I was tapping away at my phone, finding Jennifer's phone number among my minuscule list of contacts. I'm calling her. If she's nearby, she can help us find her, assuming she has a signal and battery. Assuming she has her phone. Daniel was obviously skeptical why a sleepwalking woman, presumably leaving her bed, would take her phone, but I had a theory that Jennifer hadn't been sleepwalking at all. Something had been luring her here. I had a feeling. I didn't answer him, whispering a hoarse shh as the phone began to ring in my ear. It rang once, then twice, then in both of my ears. Her tone, a basic selection from the library of sounds, was distant but audible in my one exposed ear. I lowered my own device, listening to the sound echo from further in the trees. Faint, but there. Daniel turned in the direction of my gaze, flashlight scanning along the ground to find a path of broken twigs and flattened grass trailing off deep into the brush. "What are you..." "Her phone." That was all I said before I chased the glow of his flashlight on the ground, deciding that one source wasn't enough. I pulled the spare light from the satchel around my shoulders, tapping it against my hand as it flickered to life. The tone stopped ringing, and so I called it again, desperately hoping this wasn't just a trick my ears were playing. I couldn't help but feel some level of paranoia, knowing that this forest could be drawing us further in with, like, illusions of sound and direction. And perhaps that's exactly what it did to Jennifer. I felt a sense of familiarity with the forest then. I knew this path. I almost felt sick the moment some old buried memories started to resurface, but not because those memories traumatized me. No, the nausea was part of the memory. I remembered the campfire roaring high in the center of a clearing, one person's distinct voice nagging that it would burn the trees down if it got any hotter. I remembered tripping over beer bottles and the sound of shitty guitar music. Some drunk idiot singing off-key. Oh, shit. Maybe I was the drunk idiot singing off-key. You know, that was probably me now that I think about it. I could hear Jenny's voice mingling with the crackling of fire and terrible music. "Evelyn, lay off. You've had enough. Don't you scream at me. God, you're such an ass." And to imagine that graduation party was the last time I had ever seen this place. Until now. Damn, why did I ever come back? Oh, Christ. I heard Daniel yell before I caught sight of what he had found, and God, I wish I hadn't seen it. I turned my light to him, first catching a glimpse as he staggered back with his eyes glued to the ground in front of him, and then I foolishly illuminated the grass below. There was blood soaking